Imagine for a second. What if there was this living library, not books, but like the actual blueprint of human existence, and it wasn't tucked away somewhere dusty, but alive right now in one specific place? Today, that's what we're diving into, Nigeria's genetic heritage. Because it's way more than just geography. Scientists see it as a living genetic treasure trove, packed with these incredibly ancient and diverse DNA patterns. Our mission, really, in this deep dive is to unpack why it's so important. We're talking insights into where we all came from, huge potential for medical breakthroughs, but also, yeah, some really tough ethical questions.
Absolutely. If you're really trying to get to the deepest roots of humanity, you inevitably end up focusing on Nigeria. The significance of that gene pool, well, you really can't overstate it. It's fundamental to the human story.
And we're going to cover some ground today, expect some pretty fascinating facts, things that might really shift how you think about human diversity. We'll look at the future medical side, what's locked in that DNA, but also tackle those tricky ethical bits that always come up with something this powerful. Okay, let's get into it. So first off, this idea of unmatched genetic diversity, geneticists talk about this a lot with Nigeria, and the research seems pretty clear populations there, groups like the Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa-Fulani. They consistently show some of the highest levels of human genetic diversity anywhere on Earth.
It's quite something. There was this large-scale genome study basically mapping out the whole genetic code, and it found West Africans carry significantly more unique genetic variants than, well, any other continental group. Think of variants as unique spellings in our DNA. And the concentration is what's really key here. Over 7% of all known human genetic variants that are found only in African populations. And a huge chunk of those are concentrated right there in Nigeria.
7% only in African populations. Wow. And a lot of that in Nigeria specifically. Does this incredible diversity also tell us something about, well, how long people have been there, the historical depth?
Oh, absolutely. The genetic data points to continuous human habitation in that region for, get this, at least 200,000 years.
200,000 years, that's hard to even wrap your head around.
It really is. I mean, think about the time scale.
It puts things in perspective. That's, what, roughly 40 times the entire history of ancient Rome, just continuous existence there?
Exactly. And over that vast stretch of time, you naturally get continuous mixing, adaptation to different environments, different diseases.
Yeah.
It all builds this incredible genetic richness.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting for me. This continuous ancient presence.
Hmm.
It means the Nigerian gene pool holds ancestral versions of DNA, right? Stuff that's maybe disappeared elsewhere.
Precisely. That's the crux of it. Because of that long, unbroken history, you find versions of genes, of DNA segments that were likely present in ancestral populations, but have been lost in populations that migrated out of Africa or experienced bottlenecks. So it's like having access to earlier drafts of the human genetic story.
Like finding the missing chapters in the library we talked about. Chapters lost everywhere else, but preserved there.
That's a good way to put it. It allows researchers to trace human evolution with a clarity you just can't get elsewhere. It helps understand our shared past and even sheds light on diseases that showed up much later in human history.
A living record. Okay, yeah, I get that. A living record of humanity's genetic blueprint. So we have this incredible genetic library, this archive of the past. But it's not just history, is it? You hear people calling it a medical goldmine. What's the potential looking forward?
That's the other side of the coin, absolutely. Connecting it to the bigger picture, the unique genetic traits common in Nigerian populations aren't just academically interesting. Some have no medical benefits. The classic example is the sickle cell trait. In its full form, it causes a serious disorder. But carrying just one copy famously provides resistance to malaria. And researchers are actively looking into other potential protective effects against various diseases linked to genetics shaped over millennia in that specific environment. The implications could be global.
That's huge potential. Are there specific examples happening now, like research translating into actual medical insights? I mean, for listeners thinking about global health, are we seeing shifts in how we might treat things like, say, hypertension or diabetes based on this, moving beyond one size fits all?
We are. The Yoruba genome study is a really good case in point. It's one of the pioneering efforts in this area. Researchers involved in that study, and others like it, have identified specific genetic markers linked to conditions like hypertension and diabetes. These are massive global health challenges. Understanding the genetic underpinnings in populations with deep ancestral roots could absolutely lead to more targeted, more effective treatments, not just for Nigerians, but potentially for everyone. It's vital work for global health.
That medical potential is, well, it's incredibly exciting. But like you often find with powerful resources, this genetic richness, it attracts attention, and not always in the most straightforward ways. There are complexities, ethical concerns.
Yes, that's a really critical dimension we have to address. There have been significant concerns raised. For instance, critics point to situations where foreign research institutions might collect DNA samples. Sometimes, the argument goes, without what the local communities would consider fully informed consent, or without a clear understanding of how the data will be used long-term. This leads to fears of, well, the term used is biopiracy, the idea that genetic resources are being taken and potentially commercialized without fair benefit flowing back to the source communities.
Biopiracy. And I've heard people draw parallels, sometimes quite stark parallels, to colonial exploitation. How does that connection get made when we're talking about something like genetic data?
It's a sensitive, but some argue necessary comparison. The controversy really flared up around 2019. Reports emerged suggesting Nigerian genetic data might have been used in pharmaceutical projects overseas, but without clear mechanisms for benefit sharing with the communities who provided the samples in the first place. Historians and ethicists draw the line like this. In the colonial era, it was often physical resources, minerals, timber, labor extracted for profit elsewhere. Now, the argument goes, the resource is genetic information, but the pattern of extraction and external profit potentially repeats itself.
A modern form of resource extraction, essentially.
That's the concern, yes. And adding another layer, there's the debate around commercial genetic ancestry tests. These tests can be incredibly meaningful for people in the diaspora reconnecting with their African heritage. That's valuable. But the critique is that they sometimes oversimplify. West Africa's genetic landscape is immensely complex, shaped by millennia of migrations and interactions. Reducing that down to a single, broad ethnic label, well, it can miss the incredible internal diversity within Nigeria and the region.
Right, that nuance gets lost. And speaking of complexity and diversity, you mentioned something earlier that I think really challenges how most of us think about human variation. Okay, for our listeners, get this. The genetic difference between two unrelated Nigerians, say from different ethnic groups, can actually be greater than the difference between, like, a European and an East Asian. Is that right?
That's correct. It's a finding that often surprises people because it cuts against simplified ideas of race. What it tells us is the sheer depth of genetic history contained within Nigeria. Why? It goes back to that 200,000 years of continuous presence we discussed. Nigeria has been this crossroads for humanity for an incredibly long time. Constant movements of people, languages, cultures mixing, all leading to this unparalleled accumulation and preservation of genetic diversity. Not a bottleneck, but a vast repository.
So the upshot is, if you're looking for one place on Earth that represents the full spectrum, the sheer breadth of human genetic variation, Nigeria is arguably it.
It's certainly one of the most, if not the most, representative locations for that deep human diversity.
Which inevitably brings us crashing into some really big, fundamental questions, the kind this genetic treasure forces us all to think about.
It really does. And these aren't easy questions. They raise critical points for everyone to consider. First, who actually owns genetic information? Is it the individual? Is it the community it comes from? Or is it somehow the shared heritage of all humanity? There's no simple answer. Second, if medical treatments or drugs developed using Nigerian DNA become profitable, maybe hugely profitable, how should those profits be shared? Should they flow back to the specific communities or the country? How? And third, perhaps the broadest question, how does science navigate this? How do we balance the genuine urgency to research diseases and improve health globally with the absolute need for respect? Respect for local traditions, for community ethics, for national sovereignty over these kinds of resources. It's a difficult balancing act.
Huge questions. No easy answers in sight, really.
But profoundly important ones. Because many scientists believe Nigeria's genetic diversity isn't just about the past. It could hold keys to understanding where a species is headed, how we adapt, how we fight disease in the future. It's potentially vital for our collective future.
Okay, so that leaves us, and you, the listener, with a final thought to really chew on. This incredible genetic heritage, this living library, this potential medical goldmine, should we treat it as a shared global resource, something for all humanity, or should it be guarded, protected perhaps, as a unique national treasure? Something to think about. Because the choices we make around questions like these, well, they could shape the future of genetics and maybe even the future of humanity itself.